Hello and welcome to another video for the Regional Debate Development Program. This is a video series out here to help debaters across New Zealand improve their debating skills. What am I going to be covering here in this video? I'm going to be covering how to give good POIs, how to take POIs well, and how to deal with all the things that come around the POI. Okay, great, let's jump into it. What is a POI? A POI is a question that you ask in the debate. You are allowed to stand up, offer a POI by saying POI, or stand up and say point of information. And the other team can accept or decline it, but I'll get to that in a moment. When can you do it? You can't just do it at any point. You can't jump up the moment they speak, because in debating, the very first minute of one's speech and the very last minute of one's speech is protected. Generally, judges will clap once at the 1 minute mark and clap once at the 1 minute to go mark to indicate that POIs have opened and POIs have closed. However, judges are actually really busy doing a really good job judging you. So my core advice is to keep a timer on your desk, because then you can track how much time has passed so that you can keep up with that. I'm probably going to give you that tip again later in the slides, but just a good heads up, once the 1 minute mark passes, you're welcome to offer POIs. POI etiquette. A couple of things I'd like to flag with you, because I think sometimes the temptation can be to do things that are considered poor etiquette in debating, because there's actually etiquette around POIs. Two things. One, it's good POI etiquette to accept at least one POI in every speech. So your first speaker should accept one, your second speaker should accept one. Broadly, that is the etiquette, but I think it's okay if one of your speakers forgets to or doesn't have time to. So really focus on doing it, because inevitably one of your speakers will run out of time or forget to take one. So on the whole, generally 2 speakers will take one, but the goal is each of your speakers should take one. Judges tend to penalize you a little bit if you don't. Secondly, for those offering the POIs, it's not okay to just be like, POI, get rejected, and then go POI instantly again, because that would be really, really annoying and dysfunctional for debating. So the etiquette rule is wait 15 seconds between each of your POIs. It would just go for 20. I think it's just a bit easier. You can give 3 a minute. But 15 seconds is the general world standard rule that you should be offering POIs no more than once every 15 seconds. It's fine if you're offering it less. That's totally fine. When you offer a POI, you just have to have it in the form of a question. You have to stand up like I explained at the start, and then the other side will accept or decline it. So that's what a POI is. Now, let's jump into the next slide. Let's think about how do you build a good POI, because when you ask that question, you're only going to get 2 or 3 of them over the course of the debate, so you want to make sure that they're really good. Few things. One, always make it an open question. I have lots of people stand up and they think they're gonna have a gotcha moment, and they're like we're standing by a policy in the debate that may, cause children to die, which is really terrible. And they're like, they might stand up and like, POI, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take a POI. And they're like, do you support children dying? And I'm like, no. Anyway, back to my speech. Like, if you can answer it with a yes or no question, it's not a good POI. Take advantage of that if someone asks you a yes or no question. Just be like a yes or no, and then move on with your debate, because you want to waste as little time on a POI as you can. So always make it an open question. It's like when you're asking something, so ask them something that they have to, explain out. I think sticking why at the front will often help. It's like, for example, how do you propose that you will stop the child deaths that are occurring? That means they have to do a little bit more than just say, no, we don't support child deaths. Next, write a list of POIs during prep. This is a really good thing, because when you're out there, you want to be offering POIs as often as possible. You want to be offering them every, 15, 20 seconds, because it means that it stops debaters getting in their rhythm, which is good. It also means that you're more likely to get one accepted, and it makes you look really good in front of the judge, like you're really tuned into the debate. So if you're in prep time and your third speaker has extra time, tell them to take a little moment to go to the side and jot down 3 or 4 POI ideas. They won't be the best POIs because you don't know what the debate's going to be. But at least if someone takes POI, you can look at the sheet and just read one off it. Another tip, when you come up with a great POI, like this amazing POI, and debaters stand up and like, POI, and the other team says, no, I'm not going to take that POI. Lots of debaters are like, dang, that's terrible, I missed this opportunity. But the truth is, the judge doesn't actually know what that POI was you're going to ask. So my advice is just jot it down on a piece of paper, wait 20 seconds, jump up again and POI them with the exact same question. I actually think this is more effective because if it's like 2 minutes later that you ask them this question, they still have to answer it. But the problem is it's going to muddle them up because they've got to jump back 2 minutes in their speech to something they're no longer talking about at all, which is really useful because it means they are less able to deal with it. It messes with their structure and flow of their speech. This sounds like a terrible thing, but at the end of the day, you are trying to win the debate against the other team. Next slide. Taking POIs. This is the flip side. I've just given all the debaters that are listening to these videos great advice on how to give you really mean POIs. So I'm going to give you some advice on how you should take them better. 1, when you're rejecting POIs, lots of people have the person stand up, be like, point of information, and they'll be like, no, thank you. That is not how you should do it. There's you should do as little as possible and still reject them. It is accepted debate etiquette just to wave them down. Put your hand out in their direction and gesture towards the ground in any form. It could be the wrist, it could be the whole arm, you can just wave out in that direction wildly. Any of those work. Because the great thing is when I'm talking like this and I have to say, no thank you, back to what I was saying, that interrupts my speech. But when I'm talking through my debate and I'm giving some great mechanisms because you listened to my substantives lecture and that was really useful to you, all of this is not interrupting my debate. I can just keep on talking while someone says POI. It's not going to mess with your flow. The other tip you can use is you can actually, instead of gesturing down, you can just hold your hand out for 1 second. That's generally considered the POI etiquette, to hold them there. Don't hold them there for very long. If you're I'm just about to take that POI in 20 seconds, you can just be hang on to them in the air, and then you can be yeah, I'll take a POI. When you're accepting POIs, you might think that it's easier to gesture in, but it's not going to interrupt your flow because the POI is already doing that, so just say, yeah, I'll take a POI. The other thing I will advise is that you should take it when you want it. Lots of debaters think they can only take POIs when they're offered one. That is a broad accepted thing in New Zealand debating, but on the international circuit as of recently, and it's integrating more into the New Zealand circuit, it's okay to stick it wherever you like. So you can actually ask debaters, if they've offered you a POI 20 seconds ago, you'll be I'll take that POI now, even if you rejected them. I'll take that POI now. Or if you've got a gap in your speech and you want to take one, you can be I'll take a POI if my opposition bench has one. Wait for 5 seconds, give them a moment if they've got a POI. If they don't, you can be I'm going to move on. There's 2 good benefits you give about that. 1, you put them on the back foot. POIs are surprising. So the great thing is that they have to, unless they've got their POI sheet in front of them, they've got to be oh, dang, what am I going to ask? And it can often lead to them offering POIs that aren't as good. The other thing I'll suggest is that it allows you to have less interrupted speech flow. How do you do that? So when I'm taking a POI in my first speech, I take it between my 2 substantives. I finish my first substantive, I'm I'll take a POI now. In my second speech, I take it between my rebuttal and my substantive split point. I take it there. In third speeches, I take it between my 2 clashes. In leaders, you don't take POIs, you can't offer POIs, so just forget about leaders for this entire lecture. That is really useful, and I think it'll improve how well you can respond to POI, and it'll damage your speech less. You'll try and mitigate damage and respond as well as possible. Great, next slide. I will take a POI now. Between these, because this is a great moment to take a POI before I move on to my next slide. Why did I stick this slide in here? I'm actually not going to explain anything to you. It's just to highlight how good this technique is. If I had to take a POI from my lovely friend changing the slides over here, it would have interrupted my speech in the middle of it in the last slide. But now, see how I'm able to deal with it and it's not messing with my flow. Now that I've taken that POI, I'll move on to my next slide. Bonus tips. Make a plan with your team on who's going to be asking them. You want to be consistently hitting the other team with POIs. That's quite important. And then, if you come up with one in the moment, go for that. If you haven't, just read one off the sheet. But make a plan with your team. Why do you need to do this? Because you don't want to be offering POIs when you're finishing off writing your rebuttal. because that's not the time you want to do it. You want to work out whose speech is like furthest away, least relevant to the speech. Like if your first speaker doesn't do your leader's reply, they should be doing POIs once they've done their speech. If your second speaker, doesn't do it, you can do your third speaker, your first speaker, and then your third speaker after they've done it. Like whatever order works for you is totally fine. I'm not going to give you an order, but you should work out whose job it is to ask POIs and which speeches. Secondly, I told you this tip a little bit earlier, but please take out a timer for 2 reasons. 1, this lets you know how often you're able to offer POIs so that you can keep it up. So you don't, oh, am I under 15 seconds? Am I over 15 seconds? And secondly, it allows you to see once you've hit the 1-minute mark. Sometimes judges will forget to clap and you'll miss out time that you could have been asking POIs. Those are my advice. I'm going to give one final other tip that may not help you win debates, but what it will do is help make the debating community better in New Zealand, which I think is just as important. Because remember, at one point you were a new debater as well. You were debating for the very first time, and it's nerve-wracking, it's really scary. Like my first debate, I was shivering, I was so scared, and then I got told that I did a terrible speech. It was not great, I didn't have a first grade debate. And look, I turned out just fine, or at least you believe that because you're watching my slides and listening to what I have to say. So be a little bit generous. If the other team has already accepted 2 POIs from you, don't offer any more. That's unreasonable. Taking 3 POIs is a bit ridiculous. I just cut the POIs off. If it's clear that the other side is already having a really hard time and that they're like getting freaked out by the POIs, just don't do them. You're probably perfectly capable as beta to win without the POIs, so I would encourage you to do so. Judges also don't like to see debaters like harassing people with POIs. They'll view that negatively and they're less likely to give them the win. So if it feels like it's getting to the point where you're like bombarding and harassing the other debater with the POIs, don't do it, tone it back a little bit, and mention it to your teammates if they're doing it. It's okay, you'll make mistakes sometimes and misjudge this. I have definitely, but I just want to let you know that. Thank you so much as always for tuning in to another lecture from the Regional Debate Development Program. I hope it's been useful, I hope it's been helpful. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below with the understanding in mind that I may not check them all the time. This isn't a professional YouTube channel, it's just a great medium to share and make the videos accessible on. I hope you've taken notes, because at this point you've watched so many of your lectures that I hope it's been ingrained into your brain. If you haven't, it's totally fine. You can just rewatch it and like go through the slides and jot them down just to remind you another day when you go to practice it. Thank you once again, and I wish you all the best of luck for your next debate when you go to practice.